Hello everyone, this is session 1, video 1 for Introduction to Marketing 1410. The first chapter that we're going to cover in this video is all about introducing you to some of the terminology and concepts about marketing that you're going to need to be familiar with for the upcoming sessions in the weeks to come, and also for other marketing courses that you may take as part of your degree. And in any introductory course, one of the first things we really should talk about is what is the definition of marketing. And there's a couple of definitions that you'll find in the textbook, and if you go online or look in other marketing textbooks, you'll find slightly different variations of these basic definitions. One of them being marketing is all about managing profitable customer relationships. You're going to hear that term a lot, customer relationships, because marketing today is not about just advertising to people or selling to people or convincing people to buy your product. It's really about cultivating those important relationships between a product or a brand or a company and the customers it tries to serve. The second definition there is one that we commonly see in marketing textbooks. It refers to marketing as creating value for customers and building strong relationships to capture value from customers in return. There's a couple of really important parts of that definition that I want to draw your attention to. Marketing at its core is about creating value for customers, giving them something that is of value to them. And also, the other part of that definition is equally important. It's about capturing value from customers in return. And what this definition basically means is, if I'm a company, I'm going to provide my customers something that they value, a hamburger or a pair of shoes or a car. And then in return, I'm going to get something of value from those customers, usually in the form of payment, but it can also be in the form of things like loyalty, repeat business, and other kinds of value that companies can derive from customers. So that's really important to notice the two different parts of that definition. It's both the giving or creating value and also the receiving or capturing of value in return. It's all about discovering and satisfying the needs of customers, figuring out what customers need, what problems that they have that need to be resolved, and finding really creative ways to solve those problems. The goal of marketing is, of course, to attract new customers and also to keep and grow their current customer base. In fact, if you take a look at the costs of attracting a new customer is actually substantially more than the cost of keeping an existing loyal customer. So you're seeing more and more companies these days looking for creative ways to keep and grow their current customer base using things like loyalty programs. You may have noticed over the past couple of years, loyalty programs are increasingly popular. The reason they're increasingly popular is because companies are recognizing the importance of making sure that their existing customers are deeply satisfied. So if you take a look at the marketing and the marketing process, there are a variety of different steps. And like any first chapter in an introductory course, we're going to very briefly touch on all of these things, but of course go into them in much more detail in the weeks to come. So the marketing process involves several steps. One is understanding the marketplace and your customers, and understanding in a really deep and meaningful way what they need and what they want. What problems are people experiencing, and what can your organization do to help them resolve those problems? The next step is designing a customer-driven marketing strategy, a strategy that focuses on the customer as the primary focal point, not the organization, not the company, not the brand, but the centerpiece of any good marketing strategy is going to be the customer. Then you construct an integrated marketing program, activities and initiatives and plans that are developed to help deliver that value to customers. We're going to spend a little bit of time today talking about the ways in which companies can provide value to customers. You're going to be hearing about a new concept called value proposition, or the 4 Ps of marketing, and that's sort of in that blue box there. It's about developing the marketing program that's going to deliver superior value. And then, of course, over the long term, it's really about building profitable relationships with customers. Not all companies want all customers as part of their customer portfolio. What companies really want to do is pick out those most profitable relationships and make sure that they're really developing and growing and cultivating those relationships, while at the same time not investing precious company resources in those customers that don't end up being highly profitable for the organization. And of course, at the end of all this, it's about capturing value from the customer in terms of revenue, loyalty, that ultimately contribute to the company's bottom line, their profit, and their customer equity. Some of the other terminologies that you're going to hear a lot about over the next several weeks, you're going to hear the words needs, wants, and demands, and we're going to talk a little bit in the next slide about exactly what those are and how they're slightly different. We're going to talk about market offerings, what kinds of value can companies put out there to satisfy customers' needs. We're going to talk about value and satisfaction. We're going to talk about the exchange, again, the giving of value and the capturing or receiving of value in return, and those really important relationships. And we're going to talk very briefly about markets themselves, the various groups of people that companies can go after and target in terms of their marketing activities. And again, we're going to talk briefly about them now, but we're going to talk about them in a lot more detail over the weeks to come. So the first concept that I want to talk to you about is the concept of needs, wants, and demands. And those words are often used in everyday, regular conversations, and they're often used interchangeably. But for the purposes of marketing, there are actually some specific and distinctions between those 3 terms. The first one, needs, are the actual things that people need to survive, the basic necessities of life, things like shelter, food, water, clothing, those sorts of things. And when people are deprived of these needs, these physical, social, and individual basic needs, their lives actually suffer. They deteriorate in overall quality. And for the most part, certainly not all the time, but for the most part, most people have, at the very core, their basic needs met. Most people in Canada, we're an extremely fortunate country. Most people, and again, I do recognize it's not all, but most people do have a roof over their heads. They have access to food, and they have access to sort of warm clothing. And again, I fully recognize that there are members of every community, even in a country as wealthy as Canada. There are people who don't have enough to eat, who don't have a roof over their heads, and don't have adequate clothing and to keep them warm in the winter, for example. But in general, most Canadians do have at least a minimal level of access to those kinds of basic needs or basic products and services that meet those very basic needs. The next tier of this concept are wants. And wants are different than needs in the sense that they're more influenced by culture and personality. So while everyone needs food to eat, we don't all need fast food or, filet mignon or lobster or champagne. Yes, we all need a roof over our heads, but we don't all need to live in a 5,000 square foot house that has 6 bedrooms and 5 bathrooms. And so, we all need clothing to wear, especially in Canadian winters, but we don't need Lululemon yoga pants that cost $100 a pair, or we don't need, really expensive jeans or designer tops or designer footwear. So that's sort of the difference between a need and a want. A need takes care of the basic physiological needs of human beings. Wants are much more psychological in nature, much more driven by culture, much more driven by personality. And so those are the distinctions between needs and wants. And wants actually mean nothing unless you actually have the purchasing power. So the wants, when you add up wants plus purchasing power, you get demand. A perfect example of that is, I would like to go to Hawaii tomorrow. I really want to go to Hawaii tomorrow, but the reality is I don't have the purchasing power and the ability to go to Hawaii tomorrow, so my want has not been transferred into a demand. Wants are really meaningless to a certain extent unless they're backed up by purchasing power. You can want Lululemon yoga pants all you want. If you don't have the money or resources to purchase them, then that want really sort of just festers and sits there and doesn't really amount to anything. So what we really want to look at when it comes to marketing is people who want your products but also have the purchasing power to get them. So when it comes to market offerings here in Canada, really for the most part, we're talking about wants and demands. Again, most people, not all, but most have access to the basic necessities of life, and now are looking to that next layer of marketing offerings that are derived more by personality and culture and social constructs that turn into wants and then hopefully into demands. When customers have wants and demands and turn to the marketplace in an effort to satisfy those wants and demands, that's when you create a marketing environment. A marketplace, so to speak, where individuals are actively out there looking for products that are going to satisfy their demand and purchasing those products and creating that really important relationship between the company and the customer. If I don't have a want or demand for a particular product, the likelihood of me going out and handing over my hard-earned money for a product that I don't want is very slim. So I have to want and of course then demand a product, and then in return I hand over my money to a particular company and they hand over the product that I'm seeking in return. So again, it's those important relationships. Individuals who are looking for a particular need to be met or have a particular want and demand are the market for a product, the buyers of a product or the targeted buyers of a product, either the existing ones, people who have purchased and will continue to purchase the product, or potentially will purchase the product down the road. They have a common sense of wants and needs, and they're willing to hand over or exchange, usually money, for those needs and wants to ultimately satisfy those needs and wants. So again, the core concept of marketing, what we do is we take a look at companies that we work with. They often work with marketing intermediaries, and we're going to talk, there's a whole session that we're going to talk about marketing intermediaries, and they help connect to the consumers, and so we've got this sort of the cycle or system in place. So for example, if I'm a farmer and I grow wheat, I might sell my wheat in the form of flour to a company that makes bagels, for example. The company makes bagels and they sell those bagels to a retailer like Sobeys or the Superstore. And then they're marketing intermediaries. And then those marketing intermediaries sell the bagels to the end consumer. And that is basically the marketing system or the marketing cycle. We've got inputs, we've got individuals that do things or add value to customers by making bagels and then making those bagels available to consumers for sale. And then you have the consumers at the back end who are the ones purchasing those bagels and paying the money first to the intermediaries. The intermediaries pay the competitors or the companies, excuse me, and the company then pays the suppliers. So that is basically the marketing system in a nutshell. So stay tuned for video number 2 of this session number 1.